All right. Good afternoon, everybody, on this beautiful first day of spring. We are so excited to jump into this episode recap of Survival Challenge. Last episode recap, we were able to talk with Gracie and Louie. I'm going to post some links in the comments, but you can find that on Facebook, YouTube, podcast, all that. I'll post it in the comments. But we are so excited to be joined today by some players from this last episode and someone else very special today, Bob Crowley, David, and Bobby. How's everyone doing today?
Doing good. Rough episode, but doing good.
We got a couple losers here and we got a winner. Yeah, so to offset the losing.
We're all winners today, David.
That's right. Yeah. A new beginning. Yeah.
Before we jump in, we're just going to reiterate that this is a spoiler-free episode. There's only one episode left, but we are not going to talk about who wins because our resident casual Mike, you're not casual, but you just do not know what happens.
Right.
You're our, and yeah, so we're going to not talk about what happens next, but we are going to talk about, I guess, how this all happened. And while we have Bob Crowley here. Bob, you were there at Survival Challenge Season 7 to watch. I don't know if you guys have heard, but David is Bob Crowley's son. Full disclosure.
As far as we know.
But yeah, so Bob, I just figured we could ask you what was it like coming to watch? You obviously were, for those who don't know, created Survival Challenge in Durham, one of the co-founders. What was it like coming back as an audience member and all that?
It was awesome, but let's give the real people the credit. It was done at Maine Forest Yurts on that, across the street from our farm. But Steve Pickett is the one that started this ball rolling down a very steep hill when I met him at Celebration, Florida. And I was complaining that Peggy and I were doing fundraisers all around the world, and we weren't doing anything in Maine. And I said, I'd really like to do a fundraiser in Maine, just sort of being narcissistic Mainer.
Because Maine is awesome. And people in Maine love Maine.
So Steve Pickett said, listen, I've got a friend, John Bataha, Batejo, I found out his name is John Bateja. And he goes, let me introduce you to him because he's looking for some property because he'd like to do a survivor event. And so Steve brought us over and he said, John, you know that event you're looking to do on some property? Well, he's got some property. And so it was actually Steve Pickett introducing me to John Bateja, who got this incredible ball rolling. And I was so excited. Summer before, it was 2 summers ago, wasn't it? 2 summers ago when we got out to the Midwest, and they moved an incredible event that we got going here. And the we includes a huge number of people, all the way from Kathy Dubar, who was our first volunteer who showed up on the first day as a little shy Survivor fan, and especially Kevin Thurber, who has passed since then, who just developed some of our challenges, most of our really cool challenges. But it was so exciting to get out to the Midwest and see a great location to do the Survival Challenge and the continuation of the awesome challenges that we have put together. We being them, I just in the pretty face, if you can believe that. And it was. Can we talk about the last episode?
Yes.
Okay. So I had slightly forgotten about the incredible challenge that Steve Pickett put together. And he was sort of shrugging, oh, yeah, it's no problem. We just put a bunch of wire together and put the balls on it. They were rolling around. It was no problem. And I made a point of lining 3 of us up and dropping the balls at the same time and seeing whether they exactly They were all three of them were exactly alike. It was just
Wow.
it
I
was
didn't
just
know that.
awesome. And then we dropped the second ball because the second ball goes a different direction, and it's so cool that Steve Pickett was like,
Mhm.
oh, yeah, we just put this stuff together. It was no problem. It took us a while to do the first one, but the other two were like a whiz. And that's one of the reasons why the survival challenge is so awesome, is because we have our challenges are just like the ones that are on Survivor. As a matter of fact, how long? Go like this when I'm supposed to stop.
Oh no, keep going.
One of the coolest things that happened was we were all watching Survivor, which we used to do on Thursday nights and moved to Wednesday.
Mhm.
And thank God they didn't have it on Wednesday night when I was on, because we didn't do anything in Gabon High School on Fridays except discuss Survivor. And if it had been on Wednesday, we would have blown 2 days a week. Anyway, we were watching Survivor, and they had the tilt table challenge where you have the table that's off balance, and you have to stack blocks on it and go back and grab another block. And
I know.
Okay, you know what it is. So, the first time it was on, I was watching it, and I was thinking, wow, we can make that. We could have, Kevin Thurber could build that. And Joe's over, because nobody talks during Survivor, As soon as, they started finishing up the show, Steve Pickett called up and he goes, Bob, we could have Kevin Thurber build that. That'd be perfect for our next, I know, that'd be great. And I hung up and phone rings, and John Batea's going, Bob, we could have Kevin Thurber build that. It'd be so cool. He can do that in a heartbeat. I said, I know. And I hung up. Phone rings again. It's Kevin Thurber. Hey, Bob, I could build that. I think maybe we ought to call John and Steve and see whether we really need something like that. He goes, oh, I really can. And I go, well, let's see. And so we made it. But the coolest thing about it was, on that season, that was a season that Troyzan was on. And then Troyzan, I'm okay with him calling other people back. I'll be all right. Call him back. I don't know how many times I called him back, but they called him. And it was the season after he had come to Maine, the survival challenge in Maine. And we had that challenge, of course, and he played it. And he won at Maine Forest Jurats. And then after the game was over, we brought those tilt tables up to the farm, and we played a bunch of the challenges, and he played with it some more. He gets called back, and he wins that challenge. And we were watching it that night, and Jeff came out and said, this was a challenge that was on your show, and boom, show's over. Troyzan calls up and goes, Bob, thank you.
Wow.
I won that challenge because I had a chance to practice it at the survival challenge. So anyway,
wow.
But I think that's a great story about how similar our challenges are. And that being said, what was a really simple? The challenges go from incredibly complex and incredibly difficult, and some of them can be expensive to build, to insignificantly simple ones like, here's a disc, stack a bunch of pieces of wood we have around the yard on top of it. And it is just as exciting to watch somebody. I mean, the problem with you Survivor nuts, I don't take anything to entertain you. Yeah. Okay, here's the pencil.
It's true.
On the end of your hand, and if you can balance it there, the longest you win. Oh my God.
I mean, there's a confessional from David after the Last Idol Standing reward challenge, where you say, I don't think it's in the episode, but it'll be like a bonus thing, but you say like, yeah, we played this all the time at the farm. We played it at my wedding. I win this all the time. So David, had you been able to practice some of these challenges back home?
Yeah, well, the one you're talking about is Last Idol Standing, where you have a paddle and you have the idol. And for those of you that watched our episodes, Bobby had one of the most memorable
Save. That was amazing.
Pick up Bobby. And yeah, we'll play that a bunch of times. That was in our Durham Warriors game, but also is something easy to set up at the farm. So after the game would play, it would also have it back at the farm. So when we're having a barbecue or whatever, even during the competition, the rest of us in the crowd could go and have these fun time playing. a really simple game. It's a paddle and you can put anything on it, but then you try to knock each other's off. I win that all the time. I have long arms. You just sort of keep it. Actually, remember, Dad, you and I played. There's a couple good photos of me, my dad and I dream teaming this, and I whacked him one time when I was trying to hit his idol off his paddle. I whacked him in the head. But I win that all the time. I don't know what happened. And then and we literally had it set up at my wedding when we had it at the farm. And then I lost to Bobby, his had fallen, and it's like rolling back and forth on his thing.
He throws it and catches it too.
Yeah,
I know.
Then he did his little victory lap. That's the thing he does when he wins something. He does it. He has to parade around.
You only saw it 2 times, so people might not have caught it. But it is funny though, because that one was so fun. Because I mean, rule number 1, right? When you're down to the individual, don't win the reward challenge, because that's an easy way to get target on your back. But I just got so into it. And it's just so much fun that I think you can see it on the episode. I knocked David's over, I win, and then I'm like, crap. And I wasn't happy that I ended up winning that. But no, that was a lot of fun.
It's something when you do the challenges, it's hard to remind yourself it's not always good to win a challenge. In fact, often it has reverse effect on you, right? You paint a bigger target on your back. But when John Matteo says "Survivor's ready, go," you kind of just black out and you just go for it. And when Bobby and I were doing that, I had asked him. I said, "Do you want to win this, or do you want me?" And he said, "I gotta win this." He just and he won it.
Yeah.
And, but
We're going legit.
Go ahead, Dad.
One of the things I say about myself, and I think it's true of all of you Survivor fans, I'm not competitive unless I think I'm losing.
Yeah.
No.
Interesting.
It's true. And he never, growing up, nothing was ever, really a competition. He's not the type of dad that was for himself fiery to try to win something. Yeah, he'd come to my games when I played sports and, be whistling and cheering and stuff, but he was never somebody that, wanted to, he doesn't really have that competitive fire to go and beat people unless, he's joking about, unless he feels like he's losing in a competition, then he gives it his all and he's diving around. But I think, Dad, thanks for mentioning the people that are involved in this. That was something I wrote down, is that it's easy to sort of forget because we get excited about playing and everything, but John Matteo is the mastermind behind this. If you ever get a chance, I know, Hannah, you've gotten more of a chance lately to see kind of what goes on behind the scenes. So much happens. John is such a wonderful project manager, and he works with all these, different, minds to put this thing together. We have incredible volunteers. And then we have people like you, Hannah, who have played in it, that keep it going, that do things like this. And then I want to give a shout out to Jordan and Ian, where, the event's only as good as a few things. The space that it's held is really important, right? I mean, is it going to feel authentic? Is production top notch, right? Did production put a lot of thought into it and do a great job? But then it's the players, who gets, obviously there's a lot of casting decisions involved, but do the players show up and play? We've been lucky. All of those check off. Every year we do this. Production always shows up. The event's held at a great place, and a lot of times it comes down to the players. And the players, they show up. It's hard too. It's hard with a live audience, to perform. And I think even in John Matteo's case, every word he says is measured, it's thoughtful, and it's in a live audience. And he can't Jeff Probst this thing and say, "Hold on, I want to redo that and say this again," or "We're going to redo Tribal Council." We don't do that. We do this live with a live audience. So he has to be very careful with his words. So I want to give a shout out to all of everyone that's involved, and thanks, Dad, for mentioning that. My dad's always good about acknowledging the other people that are involved, not taking all the credit.
Well, I mean, it's important, right? It's the only way this could have lasted for so many years. It's easy to say, honestly, you had this the first time. Easy to say, yeah, this is great. And then after that, I guess Bob doesn't like me talking. After that, though, it really does. You need to have a good core group that's going to say, yes, this is worth me going to as a volunteer or as a contestant, right? So seeing all the work that's happened, honestly, I think Hannah, all the editing of the episodes and everything is going to do wonders for the marketing of this even going forward.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. Yeah.
There I am.
We got him back.
You said something about the lighting, Peg. It make me look better.
Well, speaking of the casting, Bob, did you know that David was applying, and what did you think about David getting on? And were you always going to come out and watch David play? Tell me all the things about David, watching your son play.
I knew he was applying. Yeah, I knew he was applying.
Mm-hmm.
And he did grow up, but I still like going to watch him play anything that he wanted to play. My parents always supported me, and it was sort of no question, I think, Peg. I mean, we just, when we heard David was playing, and besides that, it's just the group of people, not to downplay David because he is sort of our son, but there are so many people that participate that we're so close to, and if I start rattling them off, I mean, John's there, Steve's there, Kathy Dubar's there. Who's the one that does the photographs that used to? Lisa Littell, and Steve Jackson. Anyway, Mr. Anyway was there. If you guys know, because you know the camaraderie that happens only in 4 days, or 5 days, with people that you never would have run into or do anything with, and so I did want to see David, but I want to see everybody else too.
Mm-hmm.
How did you think David would do?
I thought, although there were a couple of incidences apparently where people came out and recognized me, and they turned around to David and go, "Hey, that's Survivor Bob." And David goes, "Which one?" The ugly one. He goes, "Oh." And so I thought he did very well. He went a long way. Did you whacked him once, didn't you, Bob? Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I'm going to leave now.
Sullying the name Bob.
Great job. And this is not necessarily about David, but I was sort of hoping he I didn't want him to win because he was my son. I wanted to win because he's a good player.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was very pleased, and I think Peg was too, that he did as well as he did, and he handled himself as well as he did. I was disappointed that he didn't beat Bobby, but other than that, okay.
I'll just mention a couple things too. So I applied like everybody else. It wasn't like it was, like there was like a recruiter or something that just like put me on or something. But obviously I know the production, but so do a lot of other people too. But I applied, so I was nervous to get on. So when I got the email, like everybody gets on, like I was like so excited. It's like, oh my God, I got picked. Yes. And then my dad and I did a couple phone calls before. I just want to get his thoughts on, he knows me and like, what would it take for me to get far? And we talked about a lot of things, including just like what to wear, just to wear clothes that aren't going to, get me blisters or, keep me wet or get me a rash or something that I'm going to get medevaced out of there, like 2 days into it. Mm-hmm. Little things like that make a big difference.
I was going to say, my biggest regret, honestly, one of them is wearing white. Like, I don't know what I was thinking. I mean, I was thinking, we're going to get shirts, right? But if you're digging around in the woods for idols and it's dark out and you're wearing white with an orange buff,
with an orange,
they're going to see you. They're going to see you from a mile away.
Yeah, I mean, it's like little subtle things like that. And then he also just said, he's like, just be yourself. He's like, you're going to, who you are, you're going to do good. So I was saying, should I try to play a different type of character or person, or what? Should I try something different? He's like, your strengths are going to be fine, so you don't need to do it. But I did remember, Dad, I was telling you, I said, you know what I want to do? I want to go out. I want to have some special moments for my tribe and like win things for my tribe. But I also want to have individual immunities. I want to go and just win a couple of individual immunities. And he like laughed. Remember, you go, oh man, you're so cocky, right? You just think you go out and win a couple of immunities.
Just a couple.
just turn it on and win for the tribe a couple times. And that's what I want to do. It actually, things work out sometimes. But yeah. But it was. I'll tell you, when you're there and your family's watching too. Like he's right there, and you don't know what they know. What when they're watching, it's pretty nerve wracking. And then also, like, if you get voted off, it's not like in Real Survivor where you have like a week or two, even if you're like with him when he ended his show, it was like a week before we saw him.
Mm-hmm.
But if you come in second place or 18th or place or whatever it is, you have a lot of time to think through things and decompress more than you do in this. It's literally you get pulled off, and then you're talking to your family or your friends or the audience. They're saying, "Why did you do that?" And you're like, "I don't know." Like it's like such a flurry whirlwind.
Well, my concern was the fact that I had to convince Kim to fly all the way out there. This will be a blast of 5 days, and be like, man, if I'm the first one out,
yeah, I know.
Like,
yeah,
you have to sit. You're in Ponderosa until merge, right? So she's like, I'm not going to see him for 2 days. And then he's just going to sit in the audience. So it's like there's a lot of pressure under that too to not.
Nothing like going to tribal council, seeing someone watching, and you just like give him a little wink, like it's fine, I'm good.
Oh yeah, that was great. She's looking at me intense. I'm just like,
yeah,
we're good.
One of the great things about the Survival Challenge is you have an audience. You have people cheering for you. You have people. It's probably easier in a fashion to be in Survival Challenge than in a real thing, because there's nobody. The only people that are watching have a camera.
Yeah.
And so I think it was.
Yeah, Dad. What happens when you win? Does anybody clap? Or is it just like total silence and you're like going around like, yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
Or like when David plays an idol and the crowd goes wild. Was there anybody in Gabon doing that?
Yeah.
We had a great comment from Louie. Louie goes, "Wait, they gave us clothes?"
I was wondering where Louis' shirt ever was. Like,
yeah, Louis showed up he just misread the instructions. Oh, no undershirt, no shirt, no pants. Okay.
Could I give a quick shout out to
of course,
Jillian Lassen, who, while we're on this subject, the reason she came up with Reality Rally was she was stuck in, she's not listening to this, is she? She was stuck in Gabon for 36 days, 33 days, because she got voted out second. And that's when she had plenty of time to do nothing, and she didn't have, and then what happens is people that get voted off here in Ponderosa with, you may not always appreciate who they are. And so you do have a lot, like Bobby said, you've got a lot of time to yourself, or your things are just different. But at least at Survival Challenge, you can see your family. You can see you can talk to people. You can sort of decompress. It can be on a real show. It can be a pain in the butt if you're with a bunch of people you don't like and you can't really do anything. So
that is true.
So there's a huge advantage not going on a real show, but just doing Survival Challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Good pitch. Yeah.
And everybody that we had, not everybody, almost everybody that played on the show that came here, and I'm sure they'll say the same thing about the Survival Challenge. They actually said it was more difficult than the real show because you don't have time to analyze what's going on. You don't have time. Just don't, have 3 challenges, 4 challenges a day. So you don't have any downtime between them. You don't have any planning time. You don't have any conniving time. And so everybody that was actually on the show and then played Survival Challenge said it was almost more difficult to do this Survival Challenge than it was to do the real show.
Yep.
And I think that's what honestly hurt Julia the most, because Julia is sharp as a tack, right? I mean, she's one of the best that was out there. Having that night allowed everybody else to kind of get up to her speed a little bit in terms of actually starting to think on that level, So, yeah.
Good point.
Yeah, I even think about the challenges too. Like in Real Survivor, even though you're out in the wilderness and in surviving, you've got time between challenges to kind of revamp and eat and do those things. And in Survival Challenge, you're on to the next challenge, a half hour later? So that's crazy. Yeah.
And it's like 108 degrees.
Oh my gosh.
It's tough.
Although we had some, it seemed on my season, every day that we involved getting wet, it was a colder day. It wasn't cold, but it was uncomfortably cool. And then we had physical challenges. It was 100 plus, and but it was, we didn't have weather as bad as you know
Really?
you guys did in out there in the Midwest cornfields.
It's so funny.
Yeah, I just want to throw one more thing out there. So when I played in Survival Challenge, I was 37. My dad was 57 when he played Survivor, and I had a lot more respect for him coming out of it. Out of my 5 days, that certainly a whirlwind. But to think a 57-year-old can navigate his way to the end with a bunch of 20-year-olds, like when we merged, I was the oldest by a little bit actually. Most people were in their 20s, early 20s, and that's not an easy thing to do. We didn't have a blueprint. Like when my dad went on, we studied before he went on. We're watching like previous seasons, and like there was no blueprint for somebody that was older. Like an old guy that went to the end was Richard Hatch at 39 or something when he won. And then Tom Westman was 41 or something. Like he was like Westman was like the old guy. It's like we didn't have any blueprint with somebody to get to do well, but also like to get that far and win. So it's not an easy thing to do, but and just physically to kind of be out there. I mean, my dad's an outdoors guy. Like the elements are were nothing. That wasn't like the hard part. I think for a lot of people, they struggle with being outside, sleeping on the ground. Like that's easy stuff for him. But being able to like relate to a bunch of 20-year-olds, most people can't. Even if you're in your 30s, it's hard to do, or your 40s. So it was, I always kind of thought, I was always impressed with how we played, but get a chance to do it myself, it's hard. And then, to go and actually get to the end and have a compelling case to win is even harder.
Well, and you can't understate how actually difficult it is, right? And I've gotten a lot more respect for people on the show. When people make stupid mistakes on the show or do something that makes literally no sense, right? Why would you do that? Well, have you been in the woods for 28 days not eating food, not sleeping? No, you haven't, right? So it's like now just like, well, I was out there for 5 days, and you can definitely see how things change and how things are different. So it's like, now, no matter what, I just have respect for it, even if I don't understand it.
Yeah. Good. All right.
Any last thought? I mean, I'm sure you want to head out, Bob, but any other thoughts, or anybody have any questions before we say goodbye, I guess? Or I don't know. You can hang out if you want. I don't know.
I really enjoyed the fact that you'll continue, all of you are part of the continuation of the Survival Challenge. And it's we were so disappointed that we were going to do a reunion here at the farm last summer, but obviously nobody's doing anything last summer. But it's so nice that you are continuing, all of you, by participating and volunteering and going back, keeping a wonderful experience going. And it's and I really appreciate that. I wish we could spend more time coming out there. I wish we were a little bit closer than across America.
Yeah, and I'll say one more thing. That something that my dad says a lot is how neat it is. We have all these people from different walks of life coming together and getting along and having like this positive shared passion for something. There's nothing in our life, like whether it's like, it's sports teams or politics or and there's nothing. There's always like, some sort of divisiveness. But when this type of thing, we have people from all these different backgrounds, ages, places around the world, and just having a great time together. It's really refreshing. It feels refreshing when, we don't really get that in many other parts, like really any part of our life. So
Yeah, nothing like a game of voting each other out to bring people together.
I know. Yeah, I know.
True though.
That's true. Yeah.
This person hates me that I didn't even know 2 days ago. It's wonderful.
I wonder whether politics would be better for voting people out as opposed to voting.
That is true.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
But I just wanted to follow up on what you were saying. When we did it here, and then what I also saw out in Illinois is you become your own community for a period of time. There is nothing else in the world. You're just part of that community, and the friendships that come as a result of that are lifelong friendships. You can see, we can see because of the way people banter, like on Facebook. People have made friendships for the rest of their lives just because they spent some time together in a closed off community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's my take.
Well,
Totally agree.
good.
Totally agree.
Good. All right.
Speaking of voting people out,
Oh,
I know. You're going to be voted out.
Here we go.
yeah, Bob, thanks so much for joining us and giving your perspective and the history and the jokes and everything. It was so great to have you on.
Well, I thank you for having me. And I did sort of hurry back from between we're refurbishing a house of my son-in-law's, and then
Ooh.
I almost was late because a sap bucket was running over.
Oh,
And
good problem.
So we had to go do a bunch of stuff, and I'm going back out to get on the Ranger and go collect some more sap. It's a
Oh my gosh.
wish we could
Have fun. Have fun.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Yep.
Bye, Bob.
Nice
Bye,
to meet you,
Peggy.
Bob.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, let's jump in.
Who's that guy again?
So I have to say, I had to wear orange today because I feel like today is a funeral. Like, I was so I was so excited to watch the three.
Uh-oh, did it cut
Oh,
out?
Mike's just
Really
gonna know now.
Mike, it cut out a little bit if you can hear us.
Oh.
Start over.
Yeah, so you said we're having a funeral.
We're having a funeral for the Zika tribe.
No.
I was excited to watch the two of you and Rachel kind of get as far as you did. I guess my first question kind of goes before we start kind of the recaps. Why turn on Rachel? Why send her home?
Why turn on Rachel? Why did Rachel turn on me? I think that's question number one, right? So the plan there was never to vote out Rachel, right? I mean, going into it. After David, Rachel, and Gracie were talking in the water, me, Louie, and Anthony were talking up on land. And when David came to me and said, Rachel threw your name out, even though you have, immunity, it just, like, Rachel and I had somewhat of a kind of spotty relationship the whole time. Like, we had, we called it the Ghost Alliance, because, we were allies, but we weren't, going to stick each other's necks out for each other.
Mm-hmm.
So the second that she turned on me and threw that out, I was like, we need to get her out now, because she's just going to keep throwing my name out anyway, right? If it's not now, it's going to be next time or the next time or the next time. So it just had to be her then.
Mhm.
And what Bobby did, and what Bobby didn't know at that time is Rachel had said she suggested voting Bobby out way earlier in the game before we merged.
Yeah,
It wasn't on.
Really?
Yeah,
so
it wasn't on.
I did know that. Jen
You
told me.
did? Oh, Jen told you that?
Yeah, during the game. 'Cause
Yeah.
she-
So Bobby and I were doing at one point during the reward day, I think it was. We were together during a challenge, and we both agreed if I hear your name or you hear my name, we're gonna let each other know. And then literally like a half hour later,
He didn't tell me.
maybe it wasn't reward day. It was
Jen told me.
Yeah, and then but they had the numbers to vote Bobby out early in the Zika vote out, where it was when we got teamed up on the wood tossing challenge where Bobby and I are holding up the net. Well, we had 7 people left at that point, and Rachel and Austin came to me and said, should we vote Bobby out? And I tried not to react as somebody that was feeling close to Bobby. I said, no, let's just kind of stick with what we're doing. And I was like, oh my God, what was that? Is there something more to that? But I didn't know if it was, just an idea or a quick, I didn't know if it was like a half thought through idea or whatever. But they had, it was Austin, Rachel, and then there's Jen and Christine. I mean, already that's the majority. They could have
That's all they
run
need.
with that. that's all they needed. Then, you know, they have Brendan maybe too. But I said, now let's stick with it. And for me at that point, Jen knew that we knew there was something back at camp. I don't know if she knew there was an idol, but she knew there was something. And I just like, it just felt like such a liability. And I had already told Bobby I'd found the idol at that point, but I was feeling really close with him. And I was thinking Jen could blow up my game big time if she starts telling other people that I might have, you know, so I was just, you know, there's some internal paranoia. I would try not to show it, but they had talked about maybe getting Bobby out early. I didn't realize he had known that, I guess, at that point. But then you fast forward. Yeah, I mean, you know, Bobby and I sort of, I think, dreamt of like getting 3 Zekas to the end. Like what a storyline that would have been to have gone into the merge as the clear
targets.
Yeah, the ones that were going to get picked off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then to actually get 3 of us to the end. And like, you know, I was also, the reason why I kind of ratted her out was I was feeling vulnerable. I mean, it's like there's still numbers to take. I felt like, you know, that I might get voted out at any time. Bobby had just won immunity, so he was safe at 6.
So why not you instead, right? So it made sense for David to tell me. What's funny though is during that challenge, so I win, right, and I'm ecstatic that I just won it in a single round, and then I look into the water and all I see is David, Gracie, and Rachel talking, and I just immediately just dove because it reminded me exactly of the Jen vote, because it was the opposite. I was in the water, David, Rachel, and somebody else were just talking up on land. I'm like, there's a conversation that's happening without me. And I felt the same exact way. And I was thinking, great, they were going to go vote me off. And now they're trying to come up with a contingency plan, right? So that was my first thought.
Which sounds kind of crazy, except that's what was happening.
Yeah. Except for that was real.
If I wasn't there, I'd be like, what are you talking about? We were just in the water and the thing ended. And that's just where we were. We were in the water swimming back. It's not like we swam out there to have a conversation, but it was actually, they were throwing
you stayed out there. That was the thing. You stayed out there.
Yeah, after it ended. But that's when I went up to Anthony and Louie and was like, they're talking about us. They were going to vote me out. They're talking about voting one of you out. We need to stick together. Mm-hmm. And then on the opposite side, then they said, well, what about David? So then I was like, David has 2 idols. We can't vote him out right now. I said, like, he got the Edge of Extinction idol, or the
Exile
idol, Exile Island idol, and he got the Camp idol, right? So
you just went full for 2. You're like 2 idols.
He had 2. Well, because that was the talk from the night before. It was that he had the
Exile
both idols.
Mm-hmm. So that's why everybody needs a Bobby up until, you know, your Bobby turns on you and drives a knife into your back. But, you know, like Bobby, I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about this, but like if we talk about sort of our arc of, you know, I kind of helped save you a couple times. You helped save me. I mean, to me, that's a true alliance strategy. That's not, when you start talking about like voting block strategies, that's just a transaction, right? Like nobody sticks their neck out for you. You know, when you're on the chopping block, you don't want to risk their own, unless it maybe it's self-serving in some way. But if you have somebody that's willing to, you know, influence the game for your own benefit, you're only as strong as yourself. But if you have other, you know, I'll call it like change champions, or you have influential people that can go out and actually save you. And I knew I was there's times I knew like I'm gonna get ganged up on and get voted off. And I'm going to have to time my idol correctly, and that will save me for a half hour. Then I'm going to get voted off the next tribal. Mm-hmm. But if you have somebody, you know, in my case, it happened to be Bobby, that can save you.
And vice versa. I mean, all pre-merge, right? You're the reason why I survived pre-merge, obviously, because of that, right? And then right at merge, you and I both go off and do our work, right? Yeah. And obviously, we owe a lot to Travis and Julia. I'll definitely have to give them kudos for that. But we did a lot of work, right? You and I did a lot of work. And then I repaid the earlier favors on a couple of times on, you know, the Travis vote out.
Protecting him at the tie vote, yeah.
Protecting him at the tie vote. And then we actually protected each other on the Rachel vote out, right? So what ended up really being the biggest strength is that neither of us really relied on each other to be strong, right? We were strong on our own. But then having us come together and actually be able to work together on that is really kind of what took it, in my mind, over the edge, right? Where we actually had very different games. I know a lot of people think that we had very similar games, but our approach, even though the goal was the same, the approach was very, very different, right? And we just had a big kind of network really at the end of it, where we really felt like we had all the information that we needed on every round. Like there was never a round where I really felt uncomfortable.
I mean,
aside from my idol.
David's confessional was, I don't know why they keep telling me who they're really voting for.
I know.
Yeah, we knew from the beginning of the game with Zika. I think we were in on every vote, and if we didn't vote for who got voted out, it was more of a in case that idol got played. But we knew we knew the vote. Even when we had no power at the merge for the first few votes, I mean, we had nothing that but we were still able to get information to us, and sometimes you just need one person to tell you what's really going on. And it's I think when I look at my pregame notes, I had a very different vision on who my one true person would be. I didn't really think it'd be somebody like a Bobby. I thought somebody maybe a little bit differently. But when I look at my notes, I had maybe an older cerebral woman, or like a younger, maybe more athletic woman that can connect with who's out there, or a nerdy guy was the other thing I wrote down. So Bobby fell into my nerdy
so
guy.
As an old cerebral woman, it really
and the other thing I want to say is, like, you can go into the game with all these plans, but you have to play what the game gives you, right? You can't like manufacture things or like try to force things to happen sometimes. And how the game gave me Bobby was, we had the reward challenge where we both knew there was something back at camp. So that was something that we both knew of. So that was, and then also just like in the challenges, we often were paired together, whatever that, we're swimming out together. So we actually, everyone. So we had, we were like next to each other, even if it was like a group thing, we just happened to be, so it was easy to talk with and scheme. Yeah.
I wonder, like, like as a tip to future players is like a thought, like if there's someone on your tribe or someone that you like want to be in an alliance with, do you put yourself in those positions during challenges to just have more time with them?
100%.
Yeah.
Honestly, I felt like some of the best alliances that I had was from exactly that. And the reason is because you're able to talk, because everybody's expecting the people that are sitting out to talk, or the people that are doing the same challenge thing to talk. So you can kind of talk openly, but you're off one-on-one to be able to do it. Right. So I didn't really put much stock into challenge alliances, if you will, like during the game, but it really wasn't until afterwards where I was like, man, really during the challenges is where you can build a lot of those relationships. Plus you have the same goal, right? You're trying to keep the wood out of your, bag and
working together.
At the same time, you're working together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
did that answer your question on why I voted out Rachel?
I know.
Do you regret voting out Rachel though? Let's follow up on that real quick.
No.
I
don't know who else would have gone there. Because they would have wanted Ant. David and I wouldn't have wanted Ant. We wanted Gracie, would have wanted probably Gracie. Rachel and Louie wouldn't have wanted Gracie. So, I mean, it would have gone, it would have been either a tie or gone to Rocks, or maybe even just gone back to, well, maybe Rachel makes the most sense.
Yeah.
So speaking of challenges, so the last stack standing challenge, there was a point in the strategy afterwards. So Anthony wins, and Bobby, we can't hear anything going on. Oh yeah, that challenge. That challenge is so cool. Before I get to the strategy stuff, how did you guys feel during this challenge? What was going through your heads?
I felt really good. That's something that I'm typically very good at, is just the balance stuff. But again, one thing that you underestimate is so is everybody else, right? So I don't know. I felt good on that challenge. Obviously, I didn't win.
Yeah, I'd say same with me. And unless it's a puzzle chat, like it's something that you're doing a puzzle that some people are just good at puzzles. Like my dad can look at these slide puzzles, and without even he can just know what to slide.
Wow.
Actually, what story when he was on Gabon, they did it when he won the family reward one when my mom came out. They kind of did a couple rounds, and it was him and Sugar and somebody else, I forget, but he did the slide puzzles, the 9 slide, and he said he looked at it and he thought they messed up because it was so clear what it was, but he still had to shuffle 5 pieces, and he did it in 30 seconds. And Jeff was like, "What? You're done?" They had dream team that out there on the show, and it took him 30 minutes or whatever to get. It took him a long time. And so some people are just like good at that stuff, but I
Yeah.
think when it comes to like stacking, to answer your question, Mike, like going, like there's nothing that, you know, any of those last challenges, I feel like all of us that showed up to do them there would have felt like we had a shot at winning. I don't think there was anything that any of us showed up and said, this one's not going to be mine. But I was asking Anthony this yesterday, because if you look at his stacks, and there's a few stacking ones at the end there, his are straight up and down. And I'm thinking, you know, if you look at everyone else's, mine included, they're all like kind of at like a 45. And I asked, do you see how straight this is? And I asked them, you know, do you practice these type of things? He said no. He thought what helped is he didn't like try to measure. He just quickly did it and not, you know, really try to
overthink it.
Didn't overthink it. And like, you know, there's times where it looks like it's centered, and then you cut from the side and like you're way off kilter. And I think that, you know, those are things you can practice. I mean, to get lucky and get something similar or exactly like that when you play is probably unlikely, but I think, you know, that type of thing is important where, you know, if you can practice, you know, balancing something where you don't have the benefit of stepping back and looking at it, right? So whether it's a house of cards that you're doing right, you know, it's right up on you and you can't see how straight it is. You know, often if you practice that and you film yourself, you say, oh, you know what, I need to kind of lean this thing sort of more forward than I'd realize. You know, it looks like it's tilting, but it's actually straight up.
Yeah.
I guess some people are good at that. But those are fun ones to do. And that's like my dad was saying, what a simple design, right? That you can do, but it's like, there's so much, you know, so much pressure that comes down to doing those. And there's just as much thrill when you win one of those as some of these like huge elaborate ones that you climb up and, you know, build a staircase thing or whatever.
Classic.
Yeah.
So during the strategy, Bobby, you gave, because we can't hear anything. We don't know what's going on. We don't know a lot of.
So I can make up whatever I want in terms of what I said.
Maybe, but we see this moment between you and Gracie, and
I have it queued up to watch too if we want to.
Like, it sounds like you're asking her, "Is it me?" And it looks like she's saying no, and then you give her like this really ridiculous look. And so, like, let's just watch it. It's super funny to watch.
I don't have the sound on, so we could just watch how this goes.
So.
Yeah, she looks bad right there. What did you say, Bobby?
No. Oh.
And there's the look. There's this look of just like.
Oh man. I honestly, I don't remember. The one thing I do remember about that one, because it was kind of odd to me, was right before we walked in, she asked, "Is it me?" Like, she asked me if it was her. I don't think it was that moment, because it was like right when we were walking in. Honestly, but yeah, I gave her a look of, "You're bullshitting me." I don't know what it was. To be honest, I wish we had audio for that. But
when we were walking in, she asked me. She's like, "Is it me?" And as much as you can prep for the game, like when somebody looks at you and it's just like crushed, like I said, "Yeah, it is." And then right after, like, why did I do that? Like, what if she?
I told her it was Louie. I mean,
oh, did you? Yeah, and she just looked. You know, I felt so bad. It happened other times on Zika. Well, at least maybe with Christine, I think. You know, it's hard when someone looks at you and says, "Is it me?" And it's like, for me to just like lie to their face. And obviously you got to be thinking about jury management too, right? If I just like lied to her right there and then she goes out, she's going to vote for me in the end. I don't know. But also you can screw yourself pretty easily with, you know, saying it is them. And then they know that they need to, I mean, at 5, they're going to play an idol regardless, I suppose. But
yeah. You would think. So,
yeah.
So
no spoilers.
No spoilers. Steven, who has joined us for like the first recap of this, but couldn't join this weekend. He had a couple really good questions about this tribal and this vote and everything. So Steven has a question for you, David. So you play your idol, the crowd goes wild. So did you think about, so first off, we know Bobby knew about your idol. Did anybody else know about your idol? I guess you already said they assumed. So I don't know if anyone even assumed, because at that point I had gone to exile, and I thought people were going to think I had one, which why wouldn't you, right? Yeah.
And I didn't tell anyone besides Bobby and Anthony that I had met the jury, but so I assumed everyone else thought I had one. And when we walked in that final morning with 8 of us, both Julie and Rachel, as we're walking into tribal council, said, "If you have an idol, you need to play it." And I said, "What if I don't have an idol? What do I do?" Which I did have an idol, but like I actually thought it was sort of a good save. I said, "Well, what if I don't?" And Rachel's like, I think it'll be fine. Or something, like, but I don't know if she did something, but I was like, holy crap, I'm going to have to play my other idol they don't know I have. But then I think I saw Bobby right after, and he said, I think you're going to be okay. You don't need it. What was the original question?
Okay, so could you have played your idol for Louis to try to win over Louis, build some goodwill with him for the upcoming Final Four vote, or would you have considered using it on Gracie to have her as a shield?
Yeah, I mean, well, one thing I'd say is I never felt like I needed my idol to use my idol, which is, I feel like, should be a good resume. But I don't know if people necessarily, would respect it, but it's like, I never needed my idol. Like, how is that possible? Like, I felt like, especially Bobby and I at the beginning of the merge, like we had a huge target on our back, and it did seem like we were so good at taking it off that there was a stretch there that people just didn't take us serious in some ways. Like, we had taken the target so far off to like, he's not even a target anymore.
Yeah.
But even at 5, I knew I didn't need it. It was more for the kind of the showmanship, the performance of it at that point. No, I wouldn't have saved. I've already kind of talked about this with Bobby and our relationship. Like, I talked to Bobby more than anybody else, and wasn't even close. And some of that was just, serendipity, or it's just we were positioned near each other. But I talked to, I wanted to work with Gracie and Louis, but they, we just never talked. I mean, some of that was just the way the game was played out. I would have if we had maybe more time. I'm not saving somebody that at no point I knew they would have cut me in a second. So it wasn't like I would. There's just no chance for them. I would have saved Bobby with it if I felt like he needed it. Who won at 5? Anthony won those last 3.
Yeah,
right?
Gracie
5,
went at 5.
So, and what's tough too is it's easy to, in hindsight, to knowing that Gracie voted for Louis, right, to save Gracie and then have Louis go home. But we didn't necessarily know that. I mean, she could have thrown a vote on to David or I and someone of us home, right? So being cute with an idol, like, if it works, is amazing. But
right,
if David used the idol to save Gracie and I go home,
I go home. Like, what if I use the idol to save somebody and they dupe me? I mean, I look like a knucklehead. I mean, there's no chance. I was using it on myself just because I also know the history of Survival Challenge, and Hannah knows this. But like, you use it if you have it at 5, just use it. Don't don't try anything fancy.
I think at that point, the only time you use it is if you also have immunity already. So like, that's the potential chance to gain that ally into the Final Four. But if you don't have immunity, you keep yourself safe. I think that was it was the smartest move for you, David.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I was telling Bobby this. I'm a little embarrassed when I see my confessional saying, I'm going to do all these big moves. Just wait. Well, like, I couldn't manufacture a big move if they're not going to vote me off. Like, there was like nothing I could do. I'm not going to like, just, so I had to use it. For me, it was like, I had to use it at 5, and I didn't know if I was safe. Bobby was the only one that knew I had an idol aside from, I don't think I knew he had told Anthony and Louis that I had 2 idols. But I sort of assumed like I'm still a target here, but it would have been fun. Yeah. If I had 1 immunity, then I could have gotten creative with some other things there. And that was one of my things I was dreaming up of when I was at Exile Island. I'm like, if I get to 5 and I get an idol, if I win immunity, I can do some pretty sneaky creative things here. And, and Bobby and I could have been a 3-2 vote against us somehow. Right. So then we could have, the minority could have controlled the game somehow.
I love Travis's comment of, still don't know how you sat through that crazy tribal at 10 with an idol and you didn't play it.
I'll yeah, you know what? And most
that was
people,
a big move in itself.
I know. Sometimes the biggest move is not a move at all. Again, you get to final tribal, and nobody tends to respect that type of thing. So they want to see the move, but when you sit on something and you got an idol burning a hole in your pocket and you don't play it, I feel like that does take a lot of guts. But I also feel like too, my normal, my nerves weren't on high alert like they would have been if this is day 1. We're like 4 days into this thing. I haven't eaten. Bobby and I had a couple scoops of rice the merge night. There was no merge feast. Zeke had never won food. We never had rice at our camp. I hadn't eaten 4 days. And my mind was like not thinking as quick as it maybe should have. But I said in the moment, I thought, I'm swinging for the fences here. If I play this thing, I'm gonna get voted out the next time anyways. Then 30 minutes later, we'll have another tribe. I'll get voted out, and I have no safety net there. I said, I'm going for this thing. And when I looked at who was in, when we revoted, when both Sam and Justin got, nullified with their idols, I looked and I said, okay, Travis won't vote for me, Anthony won't vote for me, Bobby won't vote for me, Rachel won't. Like, I already knew I had the numbers. It felt like just quick, you're doing some quick math. And then when I didn't know this, but then when I saw later that both Travis and Anthony voted for me, and a lot of this is just self-preservation, obviously. And, in those moments, it's like anyone but me. I don't really, you just got to get it. You just got to survive it. I didn't know that. And when I watch it back, I'm in cold sweat. Like, I'm so nervous. Yeah. I'm like, how did I not play that? Like, how do you not play it there? Like, anyone in their right mind would have. So, I was just, I wasn't trying to hit a single or double. I wanted to swing for the fences. And one of those was just sitting on an idol during a wild tribal council. And when they came back and said, Batea said, we're going to revote and idols are in play, I know a lot of the protection people. And I was like, is this their tip to say, David, play your idol? Like, we're going to let you play your idol here. And I was like, you know what? I'm sitting on it. So, I mean,
production would never give clues.
They never would. But, like, you start wondering, like, is this something that...
when you're holding the idol and they tell you idols are in play and you're like...
And when it comes to having an idol, there's only a few scenarios how it plays out, right? You go home with an idol in your pocket, or you play it and you didn't need to, or you play it exactly timed right. I don't know what the percentage of that, if you want to call it 67%, you look like an idiot, and then 33% you play it perfectly correct, which isn't really how the percentages break out. But I'm sitting here talking about, I'm like the Monday morning quarterback right now. Oh, I played it. I was one vote difference between going home with an idol in my pocket or playing it when as it turned out, I didn't need to, which we wouldn't have known if I played it. Travis would end up going home that round. If I had saved my votes at that point. But it's easy to kind of look like it worked. So it happened to work out well, but I mean, it could have been a complete disaster. I would have really kicked myself for going home with an idol in my pocket at a screwy tribal council. But if you're going to go home, those are the type of councils that if I was going to get taken out,
that's what Travis says, right? He doesn't feel bad about getting voted out there. I mean, it's a very thin line between having a genius move and having the worst move in Survivor history, right? It really is a very thin line.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and something that confessionals have a way of doing is making you look really smart or really dumb. And a lot of that's out of your control. You're sort of forecasting things, and sometimes it shakes out in your favor, and other times it doesn't. But I came to play, and Bobby knew I had an idol early. As soon as I found it, and there's a few times I said, should we use this thing? I even said, look, if you're in hot water, I'm fine using it. He told me it's so early right now, don't bother using it. Like, we'll sit on it, and we'll use it later. Which is reassuring because he could have, if he felt worried, I probably would have just given. I would have.
Well, there would have just been no value, right? Because all that would have happened is, especially that early, where Zika was going home. Period. We knew they were, right? We just didn't know who. So if you use it and you play it right, all right. Well, one of us is next anyway. If you use it and you play it wrong, oh, okay, just add another target on their back because they used it, right? So there was. If we went home at 13. Then we go home at 13. That was just our time. I mean, to me, that was the only way that kind of shook out.
Yeah.
And it also at the merge too, it was sort of every person for themselves on Zika. Like, we sort of just spread out. I knew I still had Bobby, but I wasn't sure with the other ones. Like, I assumed they were ready to cannibalize their own team, which is what Bobby and I were ready. We were willing to do that, sacrifice the Zika to make it further, but I assumed they may have been doing that too. There's not a lot of time to game plan and get all the Zikas on the same page. If we wanted, say I wanted to play an idol, which they didn't know I had, but if we all, you have to be in agreement, and it's, things are moving really quickly, and you don't always know who other people are actually going to vote for, which is why sometimes you get a 9-1 vote for Sam, where I'm not, I already, I felt like I could be sent home, so I'm not going to risk voting somebody, put a different vote out there and then end up accidentally sending myself home if it, may have ended up being a tie if I had still voted for, you got to go with your
that kind of explains the following votes after the Sam vote. I feel like almost every vote afterwards, there's always a thrown vote. If you think about it.
I know there was that.
No, and that's exactly, that was the plan, right? We learned from our mistake. And part of it too is on the Sam vote, it wasn't meant to be a unanimous vote, right? There were different groups that decided to target Sam, and it just happened that we all did it at the same vote. I mean, there was a lot that was going around and going on between the different groups, but we literally went in thinking we had 5 or 6 votes, right? And then if she had an idol, fine, then it's whoever the other votes were, which at the time, the decoys or the other names were Justin and Travis, right? So David and I didn't feel threatened anyway. So even if Sam plays an idol, okay, well, one of them's going home regardless. It's fine. But of course, everybody just decided to have the same plan. And then Justin and Gracie knew that, Sam was going to throw the vote on Justin. And
I mean, that's a hell of a
fireworks. So
yeah, to sniff that out and then know for Gracie to know to play it for Justin.
And Gracie having one immunity, right? That was huge. That goes back to what we were saying before, right? Gracie had immunity, so she knew that she couldn't be making a mistake with that play regardless.
Right. So speaking of Gracie, robbed queen, she gets voted out. You're now at the same position you were at the merge, just with only 4 people. You guys now have a majority. It's 2 of you versus 1 of each of the other two tribes. And this is the beginning of the end, unfortunately. But David, one of the questions in the challenge, with the teeter-totter challenge, why did you choose to go for the ones that dropped as opposed to restructure the pieces that were already on top?
Yeah, you know what? I sort of started testing, reaching down. I was like, I think I can get these. I just felt like I could get it. And come on, Mike, what a hero moment that would have been if I reached down and came back. I mean, I was already getting standing ovations anyways. I mean, can you imagine? Just if I could just form a sentence, people were loving it. What if I actually reached down and got some things and went back up and did it? I mean, I didn't know the tower looked like that. It looks like Leaning Tower. I mean, I had no idea. I thought it was perfectly straight. But I also didn't know that the blocks would stand up vertically. I couldn't see how other people were building theirs. And when I watched Anthony's yesterday was basically the first time I realized you could actually, he used half the blocks to get to the top. I didn't realize that you could do them vertically.
And there it goes.
I mean, I was pretty close. If that, I think I was out of blocks on the table too. So my feeling was, I either needed to get these things, and I didn't want to, I was kind of thinking if I try to change it, this could just topple it over anyways. I just wanted to go for it. And I had no idea that the blocks could be vertical and actually hold,
how
I mean, look at that. I mean,
which is
like art. Looks like a piece of art.
With a couple horizontal ones in there.
Just decided to change it up halfway through. Why not?
I know. Look at his table.
Look at his stack.
He's got half.
He could build a whole nother tower. In fact, with how Louis and I were doing, he probably could have.
Yeah, and I thought based on the view of what I was looking at, I only needed 1 more block and it was going to be there. So I just thought I just need 1 and just stick it up there and we're done. And then it fell. But the other thing too is it wasn't on the tape, but when we got there, these are set up all in a certain direction. And John Battea said, if you want, we can turn it a different way. So you're using a different hand. And I would have built with my right hand, held with my left, and then built with my more coordinated right hand, which, I felt like I wouldn't fumble. I fumbled with my left hand because it's not my dominant hand that I was building with. I'd be surprised if, I hadn't eaten in a long time too, but I'd be surprised if I would have been more steady with building with my right hand. But I just felt like, Battea, I asked him, I said, how long will it take to switch this thing around? And he's like, maybe 10 minutes. I was just like, I can't hold the crowd for 10 minutes while I get a special, this special
That was honestly, that was my biggest regret on that challenge too, because I was at the end, right? I was just staring off into space.
Yeah.
So I couldn't see how anybody was doing. I couldn't see how anybody was building. I couldn't see how fast people were going, right? So, but it was the same thing. Oh, it'll take about 10, 20 minutes. No, we're not going to do that, right? I mean, we have to make a decision on who we're voting in half that amount of time, right? 10 minutes is a lifetime when you're out there.
You don't anything else be rushed. Yeah. Yeah, I remember editing that, seeing, thinking about Yeah.
I mean, who knows? It's not, with Bobby's, he would have been facing to be able to, I mean, you still couldn't really see. Like I was looking at Bobby's back, like, you know, I'm also looking at my own tower. So I'm not, you know, I was more listening to what Mateo was saying with how high up, and like I could hear him saying like David's is getting close, so then Anthony falls, and then but Anthony rebuilt that second one really quickly, which, you know, looking back on it,
potentially it's adrenaline because you're so close, so he's just trying to like get as quickly, you know, catch up.
Has nothing to lose, right? I mean, you have nothing to lose.
Yeah, personally, I kind of like being in the second position in most competitions because you don't really have anything to lose, right? So you can just go all out and, you know, be more aggressive with it because you don't expect to win anyways. But if you're ahead, you tend to sort of slow down and be more methodical, then maybe not make as, you know, maybe you overthink it too and not make as good of decisions. I think it's the same thing. I think it's a good point, Mike, that, you know, if I could hear that someone else is really close and I'm just starting, I just like just go right up, you know, try to go as quick as possible. I'm kicking my dad lost that one too on his season.
Oh man.
Then at 4, and then Sugar saved, you know, threw him a lifeline and he got to make fire, right, to get into the 3. So
Bobby, be like Sugar, okay?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Speaking of which, turning on your ally. So I guess like part of it is like, what was going through your mind, Bobby? Because you're thinking final 3, right?
Absolutely.
Like, that would be
100% convinced final 3. I mean, we were right on every other guess we had in the season, right? In terms of the swaps, in terms of when everything was changing. Obviously, we knew everything that was happening. No, so, but yeah, I mean, for whatever reason, and John must have, again, you pick up on things that people say thinking that there's clues in there when there never is. There must have been something, because David, you were convinced too that it was a final 3, right? I feel like
I don't know why. I thought,
we just were convinced it was final 3.
It was a big merge. I mean, how do you?
That's why I was thinking that is because like in Hannah's season they merged at 9, right, and then they went down to 2, right? So then I thought like we'll have a big merge, then have final 3. I don't know why. It was like in my head a final 3, and it sort of felt like the energy at that moment, at that time. And John didn't say anything, I don't think, specific, and maybe Bobby, you heard something different, but it just felt like this is it. We're going to do a final 3.
And we had maybe like 2. You have to think about, you know, was it later in the day, right? Like how much daylight was left? This is supposed to end at 4, and it's probably like 2:30. You know, it's like you start thinking about that stuff too, right? That really probably doesn't have any bearing on the game at all. But
nope, had nothing to do with it.
We were convinced it was final 3. So, you know, and that's where I can't regret my move. Yeah. Because thinking that it was final 3, right? I 100% think that getting David out was the right move, because what's funny is we had the exact same thought coming into the game, right? He wanted some nerdy guy, right? I was looking to have like a JT Fishback alliance, right? That's what I wanted, but I was the Fishback in that alliance, and we all know how that ends, right? So, and I mean, it's funny too, because Fishback even says at the end of Token Teens, I hope I'm not spoiling anything for something that was 10 years ago, but that he would have gotten rid of JT, right? And would have been the best move for Fishback's game. So there was multiple times throughout the season that people were saying that we were playing too similar of a game, right? So when David was at the tribal thing, right? Sam said you need to differentiate, do a big move to differentiate your game from Bobby's. Julia came up to me on that final night before she went out and said, you know, you need to distance yourself from David because, you know, you guys are playing similar games, right? So I knew if it was a final 3, or I thought if it was a final 3, one of 2 things happens. Either David just wins, right? He's able to talk his way much better than I am when it comes to that final tribal, or he and I split the vote, and whoever the third person is, which would have been Anthony, ends up winning because, you know, I get 3, David gets 3, and Anthony gets 4, right? So that was kind of my thought going into that vote. Now, obviously, hindsight, that was a huge mistake, right? Because final 2, I mean, regardless of how things would have shaken out, it was pretty much a guaranteed final 2 if David beats Louis in fire, right? Obviously, everything hinges on that, but I vote for Louis. Louis and David go to fire. If David beats fire, then it's me, David, Anthony. David would have taken me. Anthony would have taken me. Because again, David and Anthony had similar games when it came to kind of being the bigger guys kind of situation, right? So I think I would have definitely gotten into the final two, and then it would have been just hoping that everything that I was doing in the game, which I know that the audience wasn't seeing, I get that, but I didn't really want them to see anyway, right? That was part of my game.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly think I would have snuck it out had that been the final two. Like kind of whichever way that it ended up going, but obviously it comes down to what you say.
Yeah.
Right?
I think it's interesting too, because the three of you guys, I think at the very beginning, we're talking about like the three top dogs, like sticking together. And I think there were four names kind of in that mix. So it was Bobby, David, Anthony, and Justin.
Yep.
And Justin thought it was hilarious that he was like the strong man of the tribe. So like this idea of the four of you guys kind of like coming together and sticking it out to the end. And it almost happened. The three of you guys almost ended up at the end together, barring Louis, doing anything crazy. But like it's just interesting to think, like, if you thought about it being a final two, like how much different this would have played out.
Yeah. And that's like my biggest regret too, because I was, obviously you have to play every vote as that vote. If you start thinking too far ahead, or you start thinking about other things, you end up on the chopping block, right? Because it's very easy to get there. And that was the one vote where I didn't have to think at all. It was like, this is it. This is the last vote, the end, and we're done. But
yeah, I think we could call it a mistake now because we know it was a final two. But if Bobby kept me there and it was a final three, I mean, there's a situation like he said where him and I split the votes and the other person wins, or maybe I win outright and he's kicking him. He pulled the fishbach, right? So it's
right.
I mean, that's just the game. It's sort of what makes it so exciting. And even when you win, a lot of times we have a lot of second guessing and wish we had done something differently. But yeah, he's right. If we had gone down to three, if he had kept me there, him and I think Anthony would have brought him. So he was basically guaranteed final two. And I think I had more, my stock was higher with the audience than it was with the jury, which is a great lesson for me because I was sort of picking up on the audience energy that, I was sort of, they were, and unfairly, like a lot of them know who I am, because I know most of the volunteers aside from fantasies and, but I knew a lot of people, and I misread the jury a little bit, which is good and all, good lesson for me. But I think at the end, if Bobby and I were sitting together, I don't think it wouldn't have been a blowout for me. I think, it would have, I think I may have won, but I would have campaigned for him though too, because I knew people didn't see what he was doing. He, without a doubt, he was the fishbach in our JT, Stephen Alliance. I mean, he was like, Bobby was able to keep up with, all this information that is just coming from different directions at warp speed. It's like, okay, so-and-so has an idol and they have an advantage. And then these people playing together. And if we vote this way and this way, it's like, yeah, I'm just attaching my cart to that horse because like, if you got a, somebody like that, that's okay. You can be you're my CFO. You're my numbers guy. I'll just be CEO and I'll let you, you can do all that stuff. And, I maybe will get all the credit for it. But I would have campaigned for him. I don't know if, that may have ended up backfiring for me. In my head, I was thinking, well, it'd be nice if he got a couple votes, in the end. But I wanted him. If I didn't win, it was like,
yeah,
really. It ended so abruptly. I'm done, and then like 10 minutes later, Bobby's sitting next to me, and I'm like, I couldn't really process the whole thing. And the next day, I just felt like, shoot, I didn't get my closest ally to the end and win it. Like if I couldn't win, the next best thing is to get your ally there. And so I was feeling like kind of bummed, like, shoot, I could have done more to, not that I knew it was the final two either, but like I could have pitched more to keep me. And I did kind of half-heartedly tell Bobby, like, I'm like, why don't we, you want to tie this thing and have me go against Louis and make it fun for the crowd, sort of, try to twist it that way. And I could have probably, was there any way, Bobby, I could have convinced you to do that? Yeah. Okay. No. That makes me feel better.
No.
Well,
we were talking about this last night, right? The only thing that you could have actually done at that point would have been to pitch my name potentially, right? That could have been the only thing that could have done it. But the thing is again, we were trying mostly to pitch at that time to Anthony, right? So if your thought is, if you're Anthony and it's okay, who's going to be better at the challenges? if there's another challenge, it's going to be David, right? So why not guarantee basically yourself a spot in the final 2 if you're Anthony by getting rid of the biggest challenge threat that's left in the game?
Yeah, and he thought I was a big target too. So Anthony didn't want to go. You could tell he didn't want to go against me in the end either. Which, I get it. And like I had all these goals going into it, as anybody does, right? You don't want to be first out. You want to make the merge. You want to do these things. I had gone so far past my expectations. Like I got to go to Exile Island. Like that was so cool.
Yeah.
I mean, my dad got to do that in his season too. Like, I found an idol. I found a hidden immunity idol. Like that was, I'll remember for the rest of my life finding that thing. And I felt like time stopped when I saw that thing at the base of this tree. I was just oh my God. It was just, I found an idol. I just felt like I had gone so much further than what I had, expected of myself. And then also my brain wasn't working either, so to sort of like defend myself and also the other people that were there too at the end, so by the way, Mike, when you watch, the final episode, keep in mind, these guys haven't eaten in 5 days. They've been out in the sun. To form any sort of sentence and to be taking ribbing from a jury and not reacting to that, that's really hard to do. I think, I'm not going to spoil anything, but I think they both did an excellent job at the end. And unless I've been to, or I've either watched or been to every final tribal that we've had in this with Survival Challenge, that is really hard to do at the end. Is to make a compelling case when your brain doesn't work in front of 100 people, that's being live streamed on Facebook, and not be fumbling over your words. I was telling Bobby yesterday, I feel like at Final Tribal, generally, I don't feel like people's stock rises, but it's more of an opportunity for their stock to fall. They're going to get there. And if somebody like Bobby, who maybe people aren't as familiar with on the jury, if he doesn't make
David. People knew me. I don't doubt my ability to have done well in Final Tribal Council. All right, I just want to throw that out there.
Big talk.
I think sometimes it's too late when somebody gets to the Final Tribal. No matter how well they talk, if the jury didn't have a relationship with, and Bobby had probably more relationships than I did actually on the jury. He was talking with more people, I feel like, than I was. But if you get to the Final Tribal, most people, I feel like, are going into it. They already, they have thoughts on you. They've had a relationship or they haven't. But it is, I find, hard to, just lean on a compelling case that somebody pitches at the end. If you don't have any other, I'll call it a track record or a resume leading up to that. If that's what you're going on, it's going to be hard to do. So my lesson is, make sure you have those champions on the jury. And by the way, in our game, this isn't Real Survivor where the jury's hanging out for weeks together or even a day together. Bobby and I get thrown on the jury. We didn't talk to anybody else on the jury about who we're voting. There's nothing like that. It's all these independent jurors, right? That, maybe the ones that were out on day 4 that, there was like 4 of them maybe or whatever, or no, there's
4 and then Brendan in the hospital.
Yeah. So, so they were talking about like, you can't, like, even if I put Bobby on the jury at 4, like I couldn't pick, well, a different case would be Bobby put me on the jury. I go out at 4th. I couldn't campaign for him. I had no time. I'm in 4th place. If he had put me out earlier, I may have been able to go around, not that I'm pitching you to do this. No, that sounded horrible.
Learn from your mistakes. Vote your arrows out earlier.
Yeah, that's good to know. All right, David.
Yeah, the lesson learned: don't ever vote. Don't vote your alliance out.
Speaking of, having something prepared to say. So Steven said that he loved Bob not snuffing your torch. That was a very special moment. And he really liked your speech at the end. And my question for you is, did you know you were going to say something after you were voted out? Was that spur of the moment? It was really sweet. And obviously, like, in the moment, like, I'm behind the camera and I'm like, oh, okay, it's fine. Like, I'm totally exhausted. We're totally dead and emotions are high, so it was a really sweet moment. So were you planning that? What were your thoughts?
No, thanks for asking. It probably looked like I had put something together or whatever, but I'm an emotional person. I make the dumbest decisions in life because I go on my heart. Like I make emotion-based decisions when I should be making logic-based decisions. But at the end of the day, I always kind of feel good about it. And I just sort of wanted to to say something. And you don't really have the microphone very often in the game to do something like that, because the game ends and it's, you know, everyone's at the barbecue and all. You can't really like, hey everyone, I want to say something. You know, it's not, you don't really have those. Yeah, so it was like right before that I thought, you know what, I think I'm going to be vulnerable at 4. Like I knew I was probably going to make it through 5, and then we were just basically kind of walking in there, and I was like, you know, I'd like to say just a couple things, and that's just sort of what came out. And like looking back, I kind of wish I had said more about thanking production and thanking like John Batea. And the things I said at the beginning of this is like between production and then the host of, you know, Ian and Jordan hosting, and then, you know, to me, the players for showing up, like people showed up, and I knew it was a special season because I've seen all the other ones and I've been at them, and I could tell like it sort of felt like an all-star season. Yeah. Every person, even pre-merge, was swinging for the fences. You know, I mean, they were going for it. And I felt like I just want to kind of call that out. And it's hard to say things sometimes without like letting, you know, your emotions get, you know, you kind of lose your message in the emotion sometimes. Yeah. So people sort of like, you know, what's he doing? So
you did a great job.
Thank you. Yeah. Like I married my, thank you, Louis. I married my brother and his wife at, we have a house on a little island off of Maine. And I couldn't do, like, I cried the whole time. I was like sobbing. It was so, we started walking in and I felt it coming, you know, it's like, I'm like, oh no. I told my sister, oh no, it's coming. And I couldn't, it was just like waterworks. And I was glad I was able to say what I did. And also like, you know, just kind of also like with my dad, like he made it look easy. He went out and won everything. I mean, the guy won everything, you know, including fan favorite, you know, when they used to do that on the show too. I mean, it was like, you know, I thought that was really neat. And then, yeah, I didn't, but to answer the question, no, I didn't. I kind of thought of a couple things at that tribal as I knew. I'm like, when these guys told me it was me, I was like, okay, I want to just like grab the mic real quick. And I asked Batea too. You can see it in the clip. Yeah. John, can I say something? If he said no, I would have said, okay, just fine. You know, because he's a CEO. I'm not going to. You know,
he wouldn't have said no.
Yeah. And I've seen it too, by the way, with when in past seasons, who was playing Kyle? What's his real name?
Jason,
Sarge? Yeah. Sarge, yeah. Sarge,
all 3 of his names. I don't know which one is.
I know exactly. Yeah, I forget what he goes by. But so Sarge, he did something like that in Maine where he played his guts out, and he ramped up more than he did on Survivor. I mean, he was like, he was wild, and it was, you know, it's hard on some of the other players that weren't ready for like his intensity, but. When they voted him off, he said something on his way out, which I thought was nice. He said to all the players, like, you're playing a great game or something along those lines. I thought it was nice for him to kind of take a moment. So that's, yeah. I'm glad I got a chance to do something.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was like one of my favorite moments. I just think it made it really special.
I was also campaigning for fan favorite from the audience too. So, I mean,
it worked.
You gotta. I was under the impression it was $100,000 Sprint fan favorite award.
It's actually just
but it's actually, yeah. Where am I pointing? That's it right there.
Most prized possession. Hey, it was hard for me. I was when I was voting. I'm like, David or Gracie. This is the hardest choice right here.
I know. Yeah. It's these little things you do to get that deciding vote.
Yeah. So we lose David. David's gone. He walks out of tribal. Bobby, you walk up to Challenge Beach or whatever you guys call it there, and you find out you have another challenge and that it's going to be a final 2. So you play what I'm super excited to say. Don't let your balls drop. Greatest challenge name ever. So first of all, like one of my favorite challenges on the show, just because I think it brings that
it's my all-time favorite.
Yeah, me too. Yeah,
it brings the finality of the game kind of to this one pivotal moment where you're combining that physical, mental, strategic game, and you've got to kind of figure it out while having been on the island for 39 days for you 5, and you're just trying to like just get it going, and we're watching you, and you're placing your balls. Like, what's going through your head during all of that?
So that challenge, I mean, what I loved about that one too is sitting on the couch, right? It's the challenge where you're talking out loud, you're talking about your strategy, with whoever you're watching actual Survivor with, right? So I already knew what my strategy was for that challenge going in. which was to set up the 5-ball right away, right? So set up the spacing so the balls are going to be ready for when you're actually going all the way up to 5. Because what you see a lot of the times is the ball will end up falling because you have a ball that's spaced, halfway and halfway for 2, and then it just gets screwed up at 3 and at 4 and at 5. That obviously ends up being my biggest mistake because of the fact that we didn't even get to 5, right? So I was playing on a timing that I didn't need to play too early. Obviously, in hindsight, knowing that now, I would have gone things differently. Where it's like, again, playing at the moment, right? You got to play to get to 3 balls before you can play for 5, right? So, it also helped. Well, I feel like I relaxed a little bit too when Louis dropped. I'm like, okay, so now I'm just competing with one person at that point. Right? And honestly, even though Ant had just won the last 2, he had done such a good job of downplaying his physicality that it didn't necessarily feel like it was a guarantee that he was going to end up winning that challenge. But really, actually, what ended up happening too, and you don't see this, is I thought we could add balls with our other hand. So you could only use one hand.
Oh yeah. Right.
So what ends up happening is I'm moving. I have the stack on my right, and I'm catching with my left, and I actually go like this, and they go one hand only. So then I have to bring my arm down and shift my body over. So it kind of screwed me up too from a timing perspective, because my whole plan of putting it in with one and grabbing with the other was just kind of thrown out there. So honestly, even though it went pretty quick, it was such a blast to do. I do wish we had a practice round or just another time to be able to do it, because we really could have gone for a very long time. Again, that's something that I am naturally just good at is kind of doing the quick reaction stuff, the agility stuff. But
how much do you wish there was a puzzle at Final 3 instead? You would be Ant at a puzzle probably, right?
Probably.
Or you wanted a memory challenge. That's what you wanted.
Yeah, if we could have just redone a memory challenge, it would have been fine. But, they're always stacked against the memory challenges. They only do one a season. But, yeah.
If you had won, Bobby, who would you have brought with you to the end?
That's a really good question. So I knew that Louis would have talked circles around me in terms of just having a much better, vocalization of a final tribal. Honestly, I have to give Ant credit where there was only one person. Well, there were 2 people in the whole game that I just misread. One was Luke, because he did a good job of saying that, he was at the bottom and all this other stuff pre-merge, right? So coming in, we thought that he was at the bottom. I mean, he ends up going pretty early anyway, so that one didn't end up being a big factor. But the other person was Ant. I actually thought that Ant wasn't doing that much during the game. And then, even listening to his podcast afterwards, I'm like, yeah, this is revisionist history, whatever, this is fine. But then listening to his confessionals, I'm like, man, this guy really was on top of everything that he was doing. He really knew everything that was going on, and he did a great job at having that persona of, oh, I don't know what's going on. I'm just, kind of just bumbling around, me, little old Ant, right?
Aloof.
Really aloof Ant, yeah.
Aloof Ant.
which is such the wrong.
I call him aloofany. Yep.
But honestly, so to be honest, I might have actually still taken Ant, knowing that Louis would have out talked me, and I mean that in a positive. I don't mean over talk. And really thinking that even though Ant just went on this challenge run, I knew that this jury most likely didn't care about that necessarily. It was a very strategic bunch. I mean, we had an incredibly strong cast all the way through. There wasn't a goat among us, right? Actually, that's a lie. There was one goat, which was Julia, and that's because she's the greatest of all time. And so honestly, it's hard to answer that, because I don't want to put down the other person that would have been there. But everybody would have been strong. I think I still would have taken Ant, to be honest, if I had to think about it now.
It wouldn't have been a challenge run either, because I think he would have only had won 2 in a row. He had won.
that's
he won the
Exactly,
first
that's
one.
true. Yeah.
He would have had 3.
He would won 2.
had
I would have. Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah,
So
and,
it wouldn't even been that big of a difference.
I mean, I think you memorizing those tiles or whatever those things are.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know if it picked up on the episode, but there were actually 16 tiles, and there's only 15 images. So Bobby, yeah. So like he goes out and takes a mental screenshot of this thing, which is just incredible. And I think a moment like that, I would assume would kind of speak for itself as far as, okay, if he's on this level, maybe these other things he's saying are more convincing, because people can talk all they want, but it's hard to reconcile. Well, you're saying you played a great game and you're so strategic or analytical or whatever, but I'm having trouble kind of thinking of an example where I saw it, but everybody saw that moment.
Yeah.
Walk the walk, right? So
yeah.
So there are a couple some really interesting like tidbits about this final 3 too. Each of you from a different original tribe. All of you have at least 3 jurors from your original tribe on the jury. You have 4. And so it's really interesting kind of looking at the dynamics of like what Anthony's thinking as he's making this decision. So like I'm looking at it and thinking, if I was Anthony, like would I use that and I'm sure that's going to be a question I'll ask him at some point. Hopefully he's on. But like just thinking through kind of that analytics of like who's on the jury, who's going to vote for whom. The assumption would be that Bobby's got the 4 votes from original Zika. Probably not necessarily true, but you could think that way. And so I wonder, and just something to ponder is, does that factor into whether or not he chooses you over Louis?
yeah,
I'll say something quick, Bobby, then you go. The thing is, the thing about too, Mike, though, all 3 of those guys voted off all of their own members.
Right.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
I don't think
exactly.
so Bobby voted off it and Anthony did with it. I don't think there was a time where there wasn't somebody voting off their own, unless it was like kind of an intentional sort of throwaway vote in case there was an idle played. So I don't know if it was going to be guaranteed your original tribe would have voted for you. And it'll be interesting to see with the final episode who, if that sticks or not. Go ahead, Bobby.
Well, so I think the bigger thing, though, and that would have gone the other way, and again, hindsight, wish I thought of this, is to that point, Upon was very much clearer glued together, right? I mean, they were together. There is a reason why David and I weren't wearing our Zika orange shirts for most of the game once we merged. And the reason for that was to get the Zika target off of our back, right? So people would stop thinking Zika. That's why we changed out of those shirts, right? So Travis even says in one of the confessionals in the game, he goes, I don't really think Zika's working together anymore. And that was all on purpose, right? Like how we split up and how we were walking off. So my hope would have been that he would have realized, Zika isn't as close. Upon is very close. I honestly didn't even think at the time to kind of pitch that, and I wish I did. And the other thing I kind of wish, Anthony started seeing my game a lot more starting at final 7, with the Justin vote, and then with the Rachel vote, and then with the Gracie vote. I think I guess I just ended up coming on too strong in terms of what I was showing him, because typically I was only showing people what they needed to see. And I think he ended up seeing a little bit more than I wish he had, I guess, because at the end, when you're thinking, because my whole pitch was Louis is going to do much better at you than at Final Tribal. He is going to crush you when it comes to Final Tribal and what he says, right? And that was a big push on my game. Had I thought more about even just lying, right? Like I didn't even think about doing that. I felt like the writing was on the wall when it came to him voting me out, but I could have lied and just made up, this massive move that Louis did. Oh, you didn't know about Louis doing this? Unbelievable. Like the jury's going to eat that up. You can't let him through, right? It's like, that was my immediate, like after I got voted off, that was my immediate regret.
Really?
Not doing that, was not lying about some massive thing that Louis did. But yeah, I mean,
that's a good idea though for the future.
I know.
I think about that pitch all the time, because that pitch really was my final tribal council speech, and I didn't approach it as such. I approached it as, Louis gonna beat you at the end, so take me. And here's why, right? But instead of
too,
taking me,
it's really hard to balance looking impressive to the jury who's going to vote for you and the people you're currently playing with, right? Yeah. So the people you're playing with, you don't want them to be impressed with you at all, right? So they keep you around. But once they get on the jury, you want them going, wow, this guy's amazing. That's really hard to balance that without just looking like a complete threat to everybody or a complete non-threat to everybody. Like, you can't. It's difficult, and like in Real Survivor, they don't see you play the challenges either, right? They just see you at tribal council. So in ours, we get a little bit more benefit that they see some more of us, because they're able to see us in some of the competitions playing there. But that's a really hard thing to straddle. I mean, that's Survivor, at its core, right? It's to vote people off that will end up voting for you, but to try to get people that are impressed with you and hopefully not impress them until they're over on the jury, or if they are impressed, not to let them vote you off. And that's a tough thing to do. I'll also mention too, Ed, when Justin got voted off, remember the whole tribal mic where you guys talked about this a couple of weeks ago, where Justin has this live tribal, he does this great job, but then his own team members end up voting, his own original Lupon vote for him. And Anthony votes for Rachel, and Justin votes for Rachel. And if Upon had stuck together, they had the numbers to take out a Rachel, which what they didn't know at the time was Rachel was working with Gracie and Louie. They had spent a lot of time together when I was at Exile, and they were by themselves back at camp. But when we left that, Rachel comes up to me and says, she was like, "Did you vote for me?" And I said, "What?" And she's like, "Everyone else," she's like, "I just talked to Anthony. He said he voted for Justin. Everyone said they voted for." He's like, "Who?" She's like, she was like, asking. I said,
she was convinced it was me. She was convinced.
I said, "You believe in Anthony over me? Like, you believe in these other people?"
That's why she ended up throwing my name out at the next vote. She thought it was me, and I was like, why would I play my idol for myself if I knew that it was going to be you, right? I mean, the reason I ended up playing the reason I played my idol for myself over anybody else is that to me, it made the most sense in terms of who was working with who, right? Like I knew, so they would need majority. Ant and David were very close, and I knew that. Gracie and Rachel were very close, and I knew that, right? So the easiest name for Justin to throw out to pitch to that group of four would have been my name. Yeah. So that's why I ended up playing it for myself, even though you were safe. It's like, yes, I was, but imagine if I go home and I don't play it. Now I'm the guy that went home with an idol in my pocket. And I didn't want to be that either.
And when he stood up, I almost was going to interject, say, "Bobby, you don't do this," which hasn't happened on Survivor. Has anyone ever been like stopped while they're going up? And I don't remember.
That's a good point.
And I literally was going to tell him, "Bobby, don't do this." But then I thought about it later. I'm like, can you imagine if I had convinced him not to do it, and then he gets voted off? Like that actually could be a good move someday to, when somebody gets up and say, "Hey, look, it's confused. You're up there and you're like, are you sure?"
Or fake that you have an idol. Don't even have an idol. Stand up to give it, and then have somebody else, don't play it, and then come back and sit down. Even better. But so that vote too, is honestly, it was the only one that I wasn't 100% confident in going in. One thing that people miss, right? So everybody knows at this point, when you're doing when you're in the holding cell, you have 5 minutes max, right?
Holding cell
to chat.
Right?
Area, holding area.
Whatever. It feels like jail. It feels like jail. It feels like we're in the yard, right? About to who's getting
yard.
But typically you have time. So what ended up happening with that vote, I don't know if we end up going in the water first or whatever. But we end up coming up. I go up to David. We go, "Justin, yep." And then I'm like, "All right, I'm going to go tell Ant. You go tell Rachel." And we end up splitting. I run up and tell Ant. Ant's good with it. Justin's right behind us. So I drop back, tell Justin, "Hey, we're voting for Ant." And David goes off, tells Rachel. Rachel tells Gracie and Louie, like they were saying last week, right? What ends up happening, though, is me, Ant, and Justin get up right to the front of where we start to walk in, right? And we turn around to get ready to do our pitches and actually like talk as a group, and the drums start. I literally never got to talk to David, Rachel, Gracie, or Louie at all as a part of that. So I didn't know if it actually ended up being what was the vote.
Yeah.
Right? So I have no idea. Even then, I don't know what their reactions were. I don't know anything, what their other pitches were, what their other thoughts were. And then when Justin sits down, you can see him and I start talking to each other a little bit. And he goes to me and he goes, I'm going to blow up her game. But what I hear is, I'm going to blow up your game.
Oh.
What?
So, because you can see me look at him like we're talking like this, you can see me go.
Yeah, I was wondering what that was. Yeah.
That was me thinking like, why did Justin just tell me he's going to blow up my game?
Wow.
Right before we vote. So it ended up just being, I mean, Justin did a fantastic job with that vote in terms of making that live. That was the fight I loved seeing.
Yeah.
And it was the only vote in the whole game, even after that, I didn't 100, even the vote that was supposed to be me when it was Jen, right? That was the only vote I didn't have 100% confidence in on who was going home. So it made the most sense to me to play my idol there because that's what it's for, right? It's there to be played. And that was such a pivotal moment too, because we were going down to final 6. If we could have me, David, and Rachel with Anthony, it would have been, I mean, how do you beat that, right? So.
Yeah.
Something I'll say too, while I was in this, while we were in the game, I was recognizing how dynamic everything was with, especially post merge. People are willing to make moves, and I've talked to quite a few players that have played in our game, and they usually tell me when you don't go to bed at night until you have a plan in place for the next day, and then reinforce that plan first thing in the morning. That was all out the window in our season. I mean, things were happening. It was live strategy in our, we'll call it the holding cell there. But we're walking from camp up, and that's like a 10-minute walk, and people are jockeying for position, talking. All you could, things are going. So you have to have a really good pulse on that. And then you get to the holding cell. We're there for 5-10 minutes, and you could have a lot of influence in those moments where you could get things off your back, or you could just say, hey, I'm hearing a lot about they're talking a lot about whoever, or they talk about you. I just heard that, really. And there's not time to check notes on that like there would be back at camp. When you're at camp, you can go and, you could even call it out loud too and say, hey, somebody said you're going to vote for me or whatever. And you can't do that right before. So for future players, you can have a lot of influence, even when you don't have any influence before the tribal. You go to the holding area, you could switch things around. People weren't committed to anything. It's sort of a musical chair, so it's still very strategic. I'm not trying to diminish how thoughtful it was, but you could have a lot of influence in the moments right before, which was very different than what I've seen in previous seasons. I wasn't prepared for that. I sort of felt like I needed a plan tonight, and if I can't get the plan, I need to lock it in first thing in the morning. And it was like out the window as soon as we started playing. You had to.
No, and I was going to say the same thing. I think the most important time, and again, for future players, is literally that moment right before, because everybody's, it's so funny, right? Everybody's trying to sneak off to go to the bathroom when you're at camp, or trying to have little secret conversations. The second you get to the holding area, they go talk to their closest allies immediately to get a plan. And then they break off to their secondary group, and then they break off to people that they're talking on in tertiary, right? People throw that out the window, and you can pick up very, very easily who's talking to who and who's talking to how many people, right? That was ultimately Sam's downfall. If Sam was playing in an actual game of Survivor, she would have absolutely crushed it, because she would have done and had these secret conversations. It wouldn't have been all out in the open for people to air our laundry, right? And people picked that up because you see it, you're in a literal hallway. And that ends up being the downfall to people's game, is they play it too close to Survivor, and it's not Survivor, right? It's Survival Challenge. It is a different game.
Yeah, I'd say, I mean, to reinforce that, I think a lot of people go in thinking that, they're playing Survivor. This is like Survivor Plus, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's an accelerated version. I know, Mike, you host these formats, like it's different. I mean, you don't have
steroid Survivor.
Steroid Survivor. You don't have 3 days to talk yourself out of a corner. I mean, you don't like. I always felt like, given time, it doesn't matter how big my target is, I can talk myself out. In steroid Survivor, like, you don't have that time. You might not even have time to talk to anybody, because you went from a challenge to the holding cell, and they don't always keep you there the same length. Sometimes it's like a minute, and then you go in, and you didn't have time to dig. out of a whole night. I will say with the voting decisions that would happen during the holding cell area, to me, that was more of like a voting block strategy. So there wasn't the same commitment. It was more like transactional relationships. I'll call it voting block versus alliance strategy, which is, I felt like I had that in Bobby. Anthony, I got more time with kind of back at camp. Some of it was, again, driven by Anthony also found out the reward early in the game where there was an idol back at camp.
Right.
So that was something it was like something to talk about where then we also had, a few bathroom moments. But if your game is purely just to do like a voting block strategy, scrambling right before, the votes, before tribal, that's not a really sustainable way to play Survivor or Survival Challenge. Like, you might get lucky and get to the end, but that's not going to be typically a very sustainable way. Versus if you have if you're straddling both the alliance strategy, again, that's what I'll call it, versus the voting block. And this is just being thrown at you so fast that you can't, you're going based on history. So I'm going into this with all my knowledge of history of Survival Challenge. And then I'm in the middle of this thing going, this is nothing like what I've watched all these other seasons. I'm trying to navigate through and try to keep up with it. Which, is helpful when you have somebody like Bobby, who's, you can hear right now his memory recall of these conversations and who talked to who. And it's hard. It's so fast paced. There's a lot going on. Some people find a way to sort of float to the end, and other times it's more, in deliberate navigation to get themselves there as well, which I think certainly is more of a compelling case for anyone who ends up in the end, that they can say, look, I had a rudder on my boat and I knew where it was going the whole time. I wasn't floating around. I was just kind of going with whatever way I got, whatever way I got blown. Yeah. Something in our game too, one of the themes was the connections players had to each other. Like when I got there, I knew of a few people. I knew of Austin, who was on my tribe. I didn't know him well, but I just knew of Austin. I knew William just, a little bit. I didn't really know him that well. I knew Donna because she had played in the event before, and she's friends with my parents. And I didn't think that, I've talked to Bobby about this, I didn't think that players would know each other too. I've sort of thought anyone's connections would be purely just Survival Challenge connections. I didn't think someone may have gone to college together, or Rob had the podcast stuff together. That never crossed my mind. I just thought, nobody knows Survivor. Yeah, nobody knows Survival Challenge.
I even said it in one of the confessionals. I was Rachel and Sam really hit it off very, very quickly. That's great. I'm glad that we can work that relationship on Rachel and Sam.
Yeah,
when I never thought that they knew each other.
When I played, I was my own little super fan on my own little island.
Yeah.
I didn't know what existed out there. The idea that people could know each other who are friends because of Survivor. What?
Yeah. At the time, so naive, right? It's like a little wee child, right?
Yeah.
No, Survival Challenge. I think that's the only reality game, right? There's no other one. No, this is the only one. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's the only one. And when you get voted out, in our season, the first thing all the jury members do when you see them is Rachel and Sam, are best friends, and Luke is Courtney's brother. I'm it's all these connections. So what I'm thinking about, if I ever have a chance to play again, is to put people on a spot, not necessarily make it, not necessarily to make them feel like they're on the spot, but just ask them hey, do you know anybody? And put it on them to decide if they want to say they do or not. Because if you find out later that somebody knows somebody and they didn't disclose that, you got a lot of leverage on that person, right? I mean, you can blow up their whole game, or you can go back to them and say, hey, so-and-so said they played in a different thing with you before. And oh yeah. Then you say, are you telling me the truth about everything else? So I feel like it, I had never thought that anyone would know each other, maybe even that well, but it's something that, future players might want to sniff out or stir around a little bit and say, who do you know? And put it on them. If they want to say, no, I don't know anybody, and then that comes up, ooh, that's a risk.
That has my stamp of approval.
I think now is like COVID time, right? I think YouTube has blown up with a lot of these shows that have already been happening.
Fan-made shows.
So it'll be interesting to see fans of certain live games that are watching other people play, and so there's going to be like different levels of connections too. Like I saw that person, like I played in Buffalo 2, I saw somebody I played with play in New York 1, and so I was like, oh, I know him, but I don't really know him. But, like,
Yeah, I know.
I knew of him.
So you're like, so have you ever played one of these games before?
I didn't say anything. I actually did not.
Have you ever been to Buffalo?
Yeah, it was interesting. I found out that people had played Buffalo 1 after the fact. I was like, oh, some of you guys have already played this before? Like, that's annoying. But it was interesting.
I have go ahead.
I'll just go quickly, and you've heard this, Anna. But when I got into Macomb, my wife and I pulled into the Quality Inn or whatever it is there, and Hannah and Kathy were in the getting out. They were like right there checking in too, and I ducked because I didn't realize they didn't know who I was. But I've been watching their season leading up to this, right? So I've been watching all, and like you worry like, are we going to recognize each other? Well, of course not. I've just been watching them. But you also have, like, if they were playing, I already, I kind of knew, I felt like I knew Hannah's game or whoever, if it was one of them coming back, and it's something you can use, to your advantage. You could, maybe you can try to guess how they're going to play again, or find a way to hold it against them. Yeah. What are you going to say, Hannah?
Yeah. So Mike, now that we know who the final 2 is, in previous recaps we've done of this, you have said episodes ago, you said like, I could see Ant making it to the end. I mean, I think he's under the radar, and like we're all just sitting there like, maybe. And I think it might have been last week, you even said to Louie, you said, Louie, I just think you're too much of a threat. I don't think you're going to make it. And so we're just sitting there like, so how do you feel about them going into Final Tribal? We're not going to make any reactions, but like, what are your thoughts?
I'm so glad Louie's listening right now, because I want to apologize to him, because I said like blatantly to his face, I was like, I don't see you make it the Final 2. But like, it was for a reason. Like, he was a social player. He was super out there. He hadn't really won any challenges, but I think that just showed like how strong his game really was. And then when Gracie went, I was like, oh, he's the next to go. And then it was David, and then he's the next to go. But then it was Bobby, and I'm like, oh my God, he had a solid. So I even said, I think I did say in a little moment, I was like, everyone's going to know if you get to the Final 2, you're going to win this. So you can't possibly make it to the Final 2. So kudos on him. He made it to the Final 2. I think he's got a great shot at winning the game. I think just the way, and I think Bobby said it earlier, the way he speaks and the way he presents himself and his social finesse, I think could get him the win. On the opposite hand, I think Anthony played a really strong game. I think he knew when to get rid of people that he was connected to as quickly as he could. I think putting himself in that pivotal position of being able to choose Zika or Upan, I think that really kind of, even though he didn't vote the right way, I think it still put him in a really good position. I think and I think Bobby, you said it, or David, you said it, like he knew what was going on. Like you listen to his confessionals, he does know what's going on at every step of the way. And Bobby, I felt the same way about you. Like I felt like you kind of had a handle and a pulse on everything that was going on up until that end. And so I think that Anthony has a really great shot at winning, in the sense of he's got the challenge wins. He had to kind of like survive on his own as the only member of his original tribe, the longest. And then just like being able to finesse his way into pretty much every alliance from, I think, Final 9 on, I think was really like fun to watch. But I think Louis could put him in some challenge with explaining their games. I think Anthony might stumble a little bit just from kind of explaining how he got to that spot. I think Louis will be able to kind of just finesse his way to a possible win. So I think they both have a shot. I think Anthony has the leg up, but I think that Louis can easily sway some jurors. It's a great final too, and what a contrast too. Two different styles.
Yeah, very different people. I mean, honestly, anybody in the final really, well, I mean, the final 8 was just top notch, right?
Yeah,
I mean, in terms of anybody that could have gotten in there. Honestly, anybody in the final 13, I could have easily seen a pitch for. Obviously, you have to survive a little bit longer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if they did, they would have definitely had their own things to do. I mean, I think Brendan is a phenomenal player, right? I think we've seen that in other games that he's done afterwards. Like thank God we got rid of him when we did, aside from the fact that he would have actually physically died and not played any of these games. But like, there's something to say about everybody. So, you know, having these two be the final two, like, I think is fantastic. I think, you know, knowing how strong everybody's played really focuses on that, right? So not understanding how somebody could have gotten far, how somebody could have done well, I think is silly if you just pay attention. And I think that that's certainly something that they've hit.
And Louis's got that underdog story. I mean, they said it right from the merge that Upon is the underdog tribe. They lost a lot of challenges at the very beginning, lost a lot of players at the very beginning. And so here's Louis sitting at the end as kind of like the shining star of the tribe. And
hasn't won any challenges.
But I think
the underdog of the underdog tribe.
I think it works to his benefit. Like, it tells his story. And I think that that's what's really great about Survivor, is that it doesn't really matter what your story is as long as you can explain it at the end in a way that makes sense to a jury. So I think Louis got a shot. 100%.
Yeah, and I'd say, like what Bobby was just mentioning too, is I think there's a compelling case for anybody, almost everyone that we played with, even before the jury too. A lot of people went out pre-jury, but if you look at, you know, the 13 that made the merge, I mean, there's you know, people that if they make the end, that they could win depending on, you know, who they're sitting up against. Every single person. That doesn't happen on Real Survivor. You know,
right.
That's hard to do. And you also mentioned, Mike, the finesse factor. And I think a lot of times in Real Survivor and Survival Challenge, people come and try to Tough Mudder this thing, or they try to Spartan race this thing, and they just go all out. That has not worked in 40 seasons of Survivor, and it hasn't worked in 7 seasons of Survival Challenge. It happens every year. I've watched all. And in Survival Challenge, there's always people that show up and they're trying to just crush every challenge and not really talk, you know, some other strategy stuff. But they just they go all out, and I'll call it a Spartan race strategy, and it just doesn't work. You need the finesse. You need to know when to turn it on and turn off. And both the guys in the end did that. You know, they both. If Anthony was his authentic self the whole time and tried to win every challenge and try to just be, he probably would have gone pre-jury. Or he would have gone out early at the merge. And you know, same thing with Louis. Like, there was times where he turned it on and he turned it on. He knew kind of when he should kind of ramp up his social moments, and other times when to turn it down. And he was probably going to go out at what, 8, Bobby? Is that, we were talking about, like, if we had the vote then, and he ends up in the final.
Overnight.
I mean, that kind of like opens my eyes to the final 4 of you guys. You guys are easily like the stereotypical merge boot. Like, I just feel like all 4 of you could, you know what I mean? So it's kind of.
I was supposed to be, so
I know. So it's amazing you guys made it there. I love Kirk's comment. I just want to see Bobby and David bro down on another season someday.
Thanks, Kirk.
Greater than Jason.
Only if you're there, Kirk, too.
Yeah, we need Kirk's commentary.
Honestly, Kirk's commentary, my absolute favorite thing was that Final 6 challenge when we jump into the water for the memory thing. He goes, "Splish splash, survivors taking a bath." And I will never forget that line. And Kirk's voice, it was perfect.
I've always said that I want to go back and watch your guys' seasons through the Facebook lives, but I still haven't done it. But
do it.
But I know Kirk's commentary is that great that I need to.
It's perfection. It's perfection.
Cannot wait. I cannot believe this has almost been 2 hours. It's flown by.
I know it has been like that.
But yeah, do you guys have any other thoughts that you wanted to bring up or mention on the recap? Anything that came to mind before?
Yeah, I'll say, there was a few people that did surprise me. I think really everyone, once you go back and watch the episodes, it's like, you knew when you were out there that it felt like an all-star cast. I mean, people are really great, but then you go back and, Bobby just mentioned Brendan. It's like, whoa, I didn't know how perceptive this guy was. He was sort of playing this, like, 19-year-old frat bro. And I'm sort of like, looking back, I was thinking, geez, I wish he had let us in on knowing how intelligent he is and how perceptive he is in the game. I would have attached myself to that a lot. Yeah, I had no. I thought he wasn't able.
We thought we'd have to carry him around, which obviously was a complete incorrect perception.
So that was a bad move on his part to go in that way.
Yeah, and I think in any relationship, you really need to sort of lean in and be able to support each other. And I can't I can't feel like I need to bring somebody through a whole game and keep telling them what I felt like Bobby and I worked out well because, we were contributing. We both had ways to contribute to our relationship with he's getting information I'm getting. But if it's just one-sided, that's hard.
To be fair to that, though, I mean, the reason Brendan ended up going home there literally was because of one thing that Travis said. So when me, David, and Travis were off talking, and we mentioned the 3-3-3 thing, right? Hey, instead of getting rid of Zika, let's go down to 3-3-3. Travis said, so we're like, okay, who would be your 3 from Kia? And Travis said Sam. And I was really hoping that he was going to say Anthony and Julia because I had already talked to Julia about doing this, right? And because he said Sam, it basically boiled it down to it has to be Brendan because, again, picked up on the Sam-Rachel alliance, right, relationship. We knew that Austin gave Sam an idol, which we thought she was going to be, thankful for instead of just cutting his throat in the next one. So it really just left Brendan kind of as the odd man out for that, which again, I think benefited our games because I do think that he would have ended up running circles around everybody in the game. But it's just funny that's how the game ends up working out, though, right? And that's kind of where there is so much luck. If you were to rerun this game and have everybody act exactly the same, it would be an entirely different Final 8 probably. And there's so much just little nuances that go into that specific stuff. Mm-hmm. And because literally, if Travis just didn't say Sam's name, we might have thrown out Austin, right, as a potential person to go next. Mm-hmm. So it's just funny how that ends up being what can be a deciding factor for a vote out at any point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like Real Survivor. You don't know what to believe either. These are all people you haven't met before. So, like, in hindsight, you go back and you watch these videos or and you're like, geez, I should have gone with my gut either way. Like, either I should have trusted them more or less. Yeah. And it's hard to know, like, in the moment, because you're just, you're essentially meeting everyone for the first time. You don't know what they're, are they playing up a certain thing or not? And one of the big takeaways for me was, even if you're someone like Bobby and I had big targets on our back at the merge, but the targets, I think we did too good of a job of taking the target off of us that there's a risk to that. You get to the end, and if you haven't kind of built up a case again, you run out of time to do that. And even I think at Final Tribal, you say, well, I took the target off. Like, people don't care about, they want, just like, when we watch the real show, we want to see people making moves, right? Or doing things. And if, if you're successful with taking a target off your back, you want to make sure you still have a compelling case when you get to the end. That was a big lesson for me that I didn't realize, if you make yourself disappear so much, they don't even think about you, and they don't, at the end, you're going to have an uphill battle trying to convince anyone to vote for you. If it's like, hey, look, I was a threat, but I wasn't for 10 vote offs in a row. And they're all going, well, what did you do with that 10 vote? You just, Right.
Yeah. So it's interesting to think about, like you said, the nuances of how a game plays out.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Good.
Any other thoughts? Yeah. Any other thoughts from you guys?
I got a lot.
You gonna play some, Mike? You playing someday in the future?
We'll see. Yeah. Maybe. I know I missed this application, but maybe, what is it, 2022, 2075? I don't know.
Yes, hopefully ASAP.
It's fun getting a perspective of somebody that you weren't there, you weren't, but you're watching like somebody that's watching the show would watch, right?
And it's interesting too, because like when Hannah tells me that the episodes have premiered, I go and watch them, and like I watch them as a fan first. Like I watch the episode, and I'm like, oh, that was fun, and then I go back and I take notes. Hannah knows about my notes, so I take notes. I'm like, why did they choose to do this? Oh, what are they saying there? Because we don't have audio, so what's going on? So you go back through and you kind of like analyze it afterwards. But I've just been enjoying it through first, just to kind of enjoy the game itself. But yeah, it's super fun to have these conversations.
Well, and that's what's been fun for the last couple episodes is just getting that like actual live take. That's literally just through the lens of the camera, right? I mean, somebody that hasn't watched or listened to the podcast, somebody that wasn't there, somebody that wasn't tied to somebody on another season. Right?
I'm avoiding everything. Like Hannah even tells me, like I'm posting about the stream, so don't look at Facebook for like 2 days. So it's like, okay. So I try to avoid it all. Like I haven't listened to any of the podcasts. I'm literally clueless.
The podcasts are really good. When you get a chance,
I'm gonna go back and listen to them.
There's some really good stuff.
You have to break Louis down into about 14 parts. Just
so I've heard. Yeah.
I mean, David's was great. I'll just give a pitch for David's podcast. Anybody who's listening is that like he really talks about how he prepped for the game and different ways to get ready that I thought were really great. So for future players out there,
learn to make fire.
Yeah. It happens every year. There's like little things like, not like, people didn't practice fire. I think you mentioned this too, Bobby, didn't you? Wasn't that part of your plan to go get a flint and you just kind of got busy?
I got a flint and then I couldn't find it. I misplaced it and I found it afterwards.
There you go.
Hey,
So listen to mine if you want to know what not to do for prep.
Everybody's podcasts are good. I have been editing the finale and it was my first time watching the final tribal council since watching it live. And it was like watching it with brand new eyes because when I was watching it in person, we're all dead. That's crazy. And I got to say, it's a great final tribal. And I cannot wait for the finale to be out so everybody can get to watch it again or for the first time.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's been fun. We've gotten to relive our summer of 2019 for 2 years, and my wife joked that it was my summer with Bobby. 2019 summer. It just keeps going. It goes.
The content never ends.
Content never ends.
And then you guys will show up to volunteer for the next season, and you're celebrities to the players. Like, oh my gosh.
Hannah can't just let us be losers once. We have to be losers over and over and over again.
I know.
Right. But thank you guys so much for coming on. This has been super fun. I cannot believe how it flew by. This has been great. So thank you for reliving the Survival Challenge memories. Thank you, Mike.
It's a blast.
Thank you too. And in case you couldn't tell, we're into this stuff. So we're glad we could come and set the record straight and make a compelling case why we were deserving of winning.
So we hope you vote for us at this final tribal council. Thank you very much.
Yeah, exactly.
We certainly were fans.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go ahead and press the end button. But, I forgot to mention from the live reality games. Hold on. Where's my note? The Facebook page. So they are having trivia night with Suri Fields.
Ooh,
wow. It is on a day at a time.
Is it all Suri trivia? Is she like saying stuff about her own life that we have to know? So please go to the LRG Facebook page so that you can see when it is and what time it is. But if you use our LRG code, you get a $5 discount. And so that's awesome. And tomorrow night, they are recapping Surviving Maine at 8:00 tomorrow night. So make sure you tune in to watch that season. I mean, Liza's the host of that season, and she played Survival Challenge. Yep. And she went to South Africa and played Survival Challenge South Africa. So we're Liza fans here. So anyways, make sure you tune into those things. Thank you, everybody, for listening and watching. And this will be in a podcast later. Goodbye, everybody.